Hi guys, I'm Saumya and I'm back again with another video. I hope you're all well and safe. I make a lot of bookish content on this channel. If you are a book lover and a reader, then do hit that subscribe button and don't forget to click on the bell icon. So this is a September wrap-up video. I am going to talk about the 8 books that I read in September 2022. Which books are you reading currently? Let me know in the comment section and I'll begin the video. The first book is Strange the Dreamer by Lenny Taylor. So I had been meaning to read this book since 2017 and I finally read it in 2022. So that is what happens when you have a never-ending TBR. Anyway, this is the first book in a duology. The second book is called Muse of Nightmares, which I will pick up very soon. So this is a story about a guy named Leslie Strange who is a librarian and who is obsessed with a city called Veep. Now this city is supposed to be lost and forgotten, and one day he finally gets the opportunity to go to Veep, which means that this city actually exists. Leslie, of course, grabs this opportunity even though it is full of a lot of dangers. And well, a journey begins that is full of adventures and mysteries and thrills. So the way this book ended was completely unexpected and I did not see that coming, and I'm very excited for the second book actually. This is a very unique and a very different story. The characters are very beautifully fleshed out. It was a little bit of a slow read for me, but I am not going to complain because this story and the world it introduced me to was very fascinating and I enjoyed every bit of it. The next book is Call Me By Your Name by Andre Aciman. So this is one of those books again that I had been meaning to read for quite some time because a lot of people recommended that I pick this one up. I listened to this as an audiobook. So this story is set in Italy in the summer of 1983, and this is a story about two guys named Elio and Oliver. Elio is 17 and Oliver is 24. So every summer Elio's parents host a student who works with Elio's father, who helps Elio's father with academic paperwork, and this student often has his or her own projects as well, and they host this student for a span of 6 weeks. So in the summer of 1983, this student happens to be Oliver and he joins them from the United States. Right from the start, Elio is extremely drawn towards Oliver, and the story has been narrated by Elio in first person. The overall vibe of the story is quite intimate, and also there are quite a few explicit scenes in the story as well. How much you enjoy a book like this depends on how comfortable you are with reading or listening to explicit scenes. For me personally, I enjoyed the last 1/3 portion of the story because personally I felt that it had more substance and it had more depth. I was very moved by the conversation that takes place between Elio and his father in the last part of the book, and the way the story ended was also very beautiful, undeniably. I did not end up loving this book as much as I had hoped I would, but I still liked it. The next book is The Vegetarian by Han Kang. So I read this one as an ebook, and the story is set in Seoul in South Korea. So this is a story about a woman named Young Hae who decides to become vegetarian, and as a result of that her life transforms and her relationship with those around her also changes completely. She ends up getting ostracized, or rather she isolates herself. So initially it starts by her becoming a vegetarian and she stops eating meat, but then Young Hae stops eating altogether and she starts getting thinner and thinner, and she is very adamant in this new approach to living life. So this story is divided in 3 parts, and all through these 3 parts Young Hae is the central character, but the people observing her in these 3 parts are different. In the first part it is Young Hae's husband Mr. Chong. In the second part it is Young Hae's brother-in-law, her sister's husband, whose name has not been given, and in the third part it is Young Hae's sister In Hae. It seems to be a story about mental health issues. It also seems to be a story about eating disorder and a story about infidelity. A lot is going on in this story. This is a very unusual story. It can also be called a weird story, and I don't think this is the type of story that will be every reader's cup of tea, but I am still glad that I read it because it was altogether a very different experience. The next book is A Gallery of Rascals by Ruskin Bond. So this is a collection of short stories, and as the title suggests, it's a story about people who are up to no good, people who can be classified under the term rascals. So, well, I had a great time with this book. It's a fairly simple book and the stories are pretty straightforward and they are fun to read, and if you haven't checked this book out, you will definitely enjoy it. The next book is Before Your Memory Fades by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. So this is the third book in the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. The first book is called Before the Coffee Gets Cold, the second one is called Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Tales from the Cafe, and the third one is called Before Your Memory Fades. In the first two books, the location of the story is the same, which is Cafe Finiculi Finicula. In the third book, which is this one, the location changes to Cafe Donna Donna. But the one thing that is common in both the cafes is that both can help people travel in time. And the time travel has certain conditions that are very cumbersome, and a lot of people give up after hearing these conditions. So Before Your Memory Fades is a story about the people who decide to travel in time despite the difficult conditions. And as usual, the vibe is very much similar to the first two books. It's a very emotional and a beautiful book, and in my opinion, a must read. If you haven't read this series, you definitely need to check it out. You will not regret it. The next one is Heartstopper Volume 2 by Alice Oseman. So Heartstopper series has 4 graphic novels so far, and it's a story about 2 teenage boys named Charlie and Nick who become friends first and then they go on to become something more. So this is a story that has the themes of friendship, love, and discovering oneself. And on the whole, this is a very sweet and a very simple and a lovely story, and there are not many complications in the story. It flows smoothly for the most part. It's very light-hearted. It deals with certain delicate themes in a manner that is just delightful and amazing to read. The next book is The Woman in the Purple Skirt by Natsuko Imamura. So this story is narrated by a mysterious woman who is the woman in the yellow cardigan, and this woman in the yellow cardigan, who is also the narrator of the story, is a stalker and an observer of the woman in the purple skirt. She is fascinated by her and she follows her every move, and she is completely abreast of everything that goes on in the woman in the purple skirt's life, and she observes her every move. And she seems to be a well-wisher because she helps the woman in the purple skirt get her life together. Eventually, as the story progresses, we get to know about the woman in the purple skirt in more detail, and we get to know her as a person. This book has a very mysterious and a thrilling tone to it. Overall, it's very interesting and unique, and the way the story ends is also very fascinating. The entire experience for me was very enjoyable and intriguing because I listened to this as an audiobook and I loved it. The next book is Tomb of Sand by Gitanjali Shri. So this is the translated version. The original one is in Hindi and it's called Ret Samadhi, and this book has been translated from Hindi to English by Daisy Rockwell, and this book won the International Booker Prize of 2022, as you must already know. The original version, the Hindi version, is much shorter. It has around 374 pages, but the translated version has around 735 pages, so it is a very lengthy read. So when I started reading this book, I did not start annotating it right from the beginning because it took me quite some time to get used to the writing style of this book, because as you can see, the first half is not annotated at all. By the time the first half ended, I got used to the writing style, and that's when I started annotating this book. It's a very profound read and there are a lot of memorable moments in this book, which is why when you start reading this book, you get lost in it. But the one thing that has to be mentioned about the story is that it moves at an extremely, and when I say extremely, I mean it, at an extremely slow pace. In terms of the story, yes, there is a story. There is an 80-year-old woman who goes into depression after her husband's death, and then she comes out of it and she starts living her life on her own terms, and her family members are baffled by her change, but they still accommodate her behavior because of her old age. And then eventually she talks about going to Pakistan. She also has a transgender friend named Rosie. So this book breaks a lot of stereotypes, which is what makes this a unique read. I primarily picked this book up because it deals with the topic of partition, but that comes very late in the story. The wait was way too long, so I had to be very patient, and I'm not sure I enjoyed that. So on the whole, my experience of reading this book was a mixed bag. I'm glad I picked it up, but I just have to say that if you are thinking of picking this book up, then please be prepared to set aside a lot of time for this book, and don't get impatient when you are not able to read it fast. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to finish this book fast, because this is just not the type of book that you can finish off very quickly. So that's it guys, that was my September wrap up. Let me know how you liked it, let me know all the books that you read in September, and I will look forward to your comments. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to connect with me on my social media, the links are in the description box. I will see you in my next video. Till then, bye bye, take care and stay safe.